Yeah. Get high rapper. The man hour. You already know. It's live. It's raw. It's going down. Like this. I'm going around and letting everybody know that they welcome to the show. It's the latest thing you ever seen, you already know. Let me introduce you to your host of the hour. It be Mike and Mike. Yeah, it's the man hour. Got the hottest plays, all the breaking news. Every rumor, every trade, every breaking bruise. Tighten up the screws. Yeah, it's going down. Have you saying what the fuck and never watered down. It's going down. I'll be rolling up. And if you buy it or you sell it, then you made the cut. Watch me flip it back. I can double up. I got sriracha for that ass, I'ma burn it up. Gotta check the rules and know that it be fair and foul. Rep blow the whistle, coach throw the towel. We can do this on the field or outside the lines. It's the man hour though, now we going live.
And what is up, everybody? Michael Buckheiser here with the Mike and Mike Man Hour. Here you guys a special guest host tonight. But before we get too carried away into that, guys, we're still giving away that $100 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is go over to our Facebook page, the Mike and Mike Man Hour, like that Facebook page, share this live stream, and you can join in some chat talk groups as well. Our entries, you get 1 entry for liking the page, 2 entries for joining a trash talk group, and 10 entries for sharing this live stream. It is that easy. We have some top fans. We have Steve Durr as a Deer as a top fan. We have Jameson as a top fan. Those guys get 100 more entries becoming a top fan. How do you become a top fan, you ask? You simply just have to interact with us in the chat. I am watching the chat here on my other screen. And guys, if you were listening to On and Off the Field tonight, Dylan from On and Off the Field gave you guys a special code, a special keyword. The first person to tell me that keyword in the chat gets a $25 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is tell me what that word is in the chat, and I'll see it right here on my screen, and boom, $25 Amazon gift card heading your way. But Mike LeBlanc is MIA tonight. He is doing some business stuff, so I'm welcoming an old friend here, my brother from way back in the day from Big Blue Breakdown, Matthew Lyle. Matthew, it's been a while, man. What's up?
It has been a while indeed. What is going on? Nothing. COVID, living the dream. Got the tank rolling. Sun's out, guns out, sky's out, thighs out. You know how it is. How you been, Mike?
Dude, I have been absolutely swamped because I do work IT, and it was a matter of like 3 days. We had to get 500 people prepped to work from home, and we were pulling like 23-hour days. It was absolutely crazy and absolutely asinine. But I'm glad stuff's starting to come back a little bit down to normal. Football season for us, for pad-wise, has been pushed back to August 3rd, which is kind of a bummer. Me and you both live in the southern Indiana area, and we know how great my high school team is going to be this season. And for us to get pushed back a little bit, it kind of sucks. But, dude, we have scouts crawling like crazy over there. You need to come out to a practice here on August 3rd, Matthew, and, man, there has been 3 or 4 scouts at every practice. These are conditioning practices that they have been at, and it is absolutely crazy. So, Dylan, you cannot win it. Sheesh. Come on, man. What are you trying to do? Shit the system. It's for the fans over here, brother. But Dylan from On and Off the Field, guys. As I said in the pre-show, if you say the word in the chat, you win that $25 Amazon gift card. But Matthew, I this is the first time many people have been seeing you. So tell people a little bit about your fandom. Who do you root for, and really, who was your NFL team now?
Well, I mean, first off, I mean, Kentucky Wildcats all the way. That's really where my allegiance lies. That's the only place that the heart will not move on is from Big Blue Nation. Kentucky football, Kentucky basketball, all the way down to which. I mean, not to go off the path too far here. If we don't have football this fall, then it'll just be that's the only sports. But it don't matter. It'll be Kentucky football, Kentucky basketball, and anything Big Blue. Really, now, wherever my money is, man, that's where the football's at. That's where that pro team is. Whatever team I put those big smackaroos on. We got FanDuel. We got all the things going on down here in Indiana. Kentucky needs to get on board with that before they miss out on some great things. But, yeah, man, wherever the money is, whatever I am feeling froggy, that's where I'm putting that money. And that's my fantasy team, my bets, my lines, the covers. You know, and Mike, and you know, I've been very passionate about it's okay to be a bandwagon fan. Why wouldn't we be a bandwagon fan, especially in pro sports? That's where you want to be a bandwagon fan. Pro sports is essentially a business. You know, you walk around. You don't walk around. I guarantee you go through most people's houses. There's no more RCA. You don't have a BlackBerry cell phone. I know Motorola tried to bring out the flip phone, the Razor again from back in the day, but you don't rock the old school phone. You rock the newest, the latest, the Apple. You have Vizio and you have Samsung. You have the new brands. You have the new. You don't deal with the Green Bay Packers because they were amazing back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. You rock on to, hey, who's there? Patrick Mahomes, the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. You find something new. So when somebody says, oh, you're a bandwagon fan, I say, of course. Why wouldn't I be? Why wouldn't I support a good company? Why wouldn't I support a company that puts out a good product? If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, I don't get what you're doing. You're still backing the world's worst company. This is the company that had recalls, and they've been trying to kill you for the last 20 years. Why are you still supporting them?
Yeah, I mean, but that's probably the best I've ever heard you say that. Like, you've been practicing, haven't you?
Actually, yeah. I mean, because of COVID, I don't talk to anybody. Right. My wife is 8 months pregnant. I don't talk to anybody. Right. I just talk to myself, and I come up with riveting arguments. And sometimes I talk myself out of a thought. But that's one that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to talk myself out of that. But on a little bit more of a serious note on that, I mean, you eventually start getting fond of a team.
Right.
And when you have a situation in the NFL where, you know, Tom Brady played for 20 years, and actually I got into I became a Patriots fan because I didn't know anything about the NFL until I got a Pizza Hut demo disc in 1997, and I could play the Patriots versus the Packers. And I was like, hey, that Patriots logo looked cool. So I picked the Patriots. And then when I started watching the NFL, I believe it was the Patriots' first Super Bowl. I said, there's my squad.
Right.
Little did I know that would have the next 20 years dynasty. And, you know, of course, obviously that made it easier not to jump ship when they always felt. And then, like, when I got around 17 or 18, you know, you start finding other things to entertain you. Then, you know, the Patriots had kind of waffed off a little bit. Then, boom, they're right back with Randy Moss, a Wes Welker, who was a 5'8" white slot receiver who was like my dream because everybody said, well, Matt, you're obviously too small to make it to the NFL. And
Matthew's 5'8".
Yeah, clearly played wide receiver. And clearly, you know, I never did make it to the NFL, but it was just kind of nice to have that rooting interest. And, you know, obviously now Tom Brady's bounced. I would love a perfect scenario where we see like a Shaq Kobe type thing. If you remember what happened when they first had their split, like I would love to see like back-to-back Patriots Buccaneers Super Bowls, and they just be the most entertaining Super Bowls you've ever seen. And Bill gets one, and Brady gets one, and then, you know, I'd be cool if you never heard of either one of them again. But it just kind of that.
Right.
But no, now I'm just, you know, but I will say, and you might be pleased or not pleased to hear this, I'm kind of on this Mahomes train, mainly because everybody's doubting that contract. And I thought that contract was brilliant on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you pay somebody $500 million, there's going to be risk. There's going to be sacrifices that have to be made. But, I mean, all things considered, I thought that was a pretty good deal. And so I'm pulling for them if they're in the opportunity. Like opening game, I'm not going to be like, woo, Chiefs. But if I sit down there and they're in the Super Bowl, Like last year when it was Mahomes versus Niners, I was like, okay, let's see Mahomes win this.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm not going to be out there with the Mahomes jersey and the Chiefs, lore on. But if the opportunity presents itself for Mahomes to get a ring or get an MVP or build on that success, then I'm all for that.
Right. So, many people are saying, who win and lost out of that contract deal. I mean, who do you think the winner is? Is it the Chiefs or is it Patrick Mahomes in the end?
I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes because, $500 million, $500 million, which
it's not guaranteed though.
It's not, but it's weird because it's like 90% of it's guaranteed in merchandising rights. I mean, it's for all intent and purposes $500 million.
Yeah.
And I'd always ask, when are we going to see that $1 billion contract? And everybody's like, oh, we'll never see it. And I'm like, not so fast, my friend. It was just a couple of years. I say couple. It was 30 years ago. We saw the $1 million contract.
Right.
So we go in 30 years. We go from 0 to 500 million. I don't think even at that same pace, you're looking at another 30 years, which I don't think it'll take. I think within a decade, you'll see $1 billion. But that's neither here nor there. I think the winner is Patrick Mahomes only because he gets the paycheck, right? He gets that money. And this isn't like the NBA where, star equals trophy, which often is the case in the NBA. In the NFL, it's a little more star, maybe. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Everybody for so long crowned him as the the greatness, and he's got one Super Bowl ring. And that's not a knock on him. That's just a knock on the NFL. And he happens to play in an era where there's this Brady Belichick machine just chewing up everybody. But I think don't get me wrong. I think the Chiefs win. I think at the very least, because I think the Chiefs had the luxury of winning since they won the Super Bowl last year. Because if you don't win the Super Bowl last year, and then you sign him to $500 million, you sign him to that. If you do that, then the pressure's huge, right? As a Chiefs fan, you're like, why are we giving this much salary? But now you have a ring. And if he gets in the next decade or 12 years, if you count, I guess, the totality of the
it's
contract.
An extension. It's a 10-year extension. On
if
top
he
of
wins 2 more rings, I don't know realistically how much more excited you as a Chief fan could be.
Yeah.
But even if he never wins another one, there's going to be haters out there that say, oh, well, you overpaid that. But you also have to remember by the time he's in year 6, Kirk Cousins 2.0 will be making the same amount of money. There'll be some scrub quarterback out there who hijacks a team, and it won't look as bad. You know what I'm saying? It's just Patrick Mahomes is the first to get that $500 million. So I think, but even if not, you got a quarterback that is going to be at least, Mike, fun to watch.
Yeah,
at least every year you're going to, assuming injuries doesn't happen or some kind of colossal contract with another player, every year you're going to buy your season tickets, buy your jerseys, buy your hats, buy your helmets with the thought, we may win this year. And I think legitly only, obviously you could say that as the Patriots for the last 20 years, but in the last decade, is there only true Cowboy fans and a lot of fan base gets crazy, but how many teams can say that consistently in the last decade? I think maybe 3. And now that you're sitting at that table, that's got to be a great feeling for the fans. I assume Andy Reid's health is fine. I don't know how old really he is. You got Andy Reid now, and now you got him locked in. So at least sitting right here, I'm like, everybody's a winner. The contract's done so in a way that everybody gets to win. You get to, and Lord forbid, he gets to the back end of that contract, and the money does get a little tight. If the kid's got 2 or 3 Super Bowls, it's going to be kind of the Patriots effect for that offense. You're going to find I'm trying to think of a younger receiver. You're going to find a Julio Jones type guy in 6 years who's on the decline of his career, but wants that ring and might take less. So you're going to get that luxury. I think you guys, as of today, sitting right here, I say everybody's a winner, but the man who gets to cash those checks is the clear winner.
Yeah, just to add to some points to that, I've spoke on this on 3 or 4 different shows. Steve Deere, the man with the word there, banned was the code word. Steve, you do get a $25 Amazon gift card. send me a message here on Facebook, and we'll work that out for you to get that shipped out there. But I mean, so as I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I am a Kansas City fan. Royal, Sporting K's, KAC, the Mavericks, and then the Chiefs as well. Guys, there were talks of this contract last year. Okay, they were in talks of the contract that like the 10-year deal last year. People don't understand that. Me being a Kansas City person, being on the I talked to insiders and stuff like that from the team, like they were talking about this deal last year. So when this deal came out, it did not surprise me one bit. Now the price surprised me, yes, but not the 10-year deal. But also the winner was definitely the Kansas City Chiefs, because Patrick Mahomes is such a down to earth individual. I mean, he still lives in like a studio apartment in on the plaza. He pays like $900 or like $1,000 a month for. I mean, he's a very humble, very down to earth person. And I think when it comes to, year 7, year 8 of this deal, and he's still at the peak of his game, he'll be 35 years old, 34 years old. I mean, he's still due for another contract, more than likely. I mean, he might take the hometown discount to keep the Kansas City Chiefs, on the top of their game and bring in some core receivers as well. I mean, what people fail to understand, Kansas City's kind of like wide receiver U right now. We have 6 wide receivers that could probably start on any other NFL team. Sammy Watkins took a pay cut to stay at Kansas City. Tyreek Hill said he would take a pay cut to stay with Kansas City. Travis Kelce said the same thing. Now, is it going to happen? Who really knows? We'll know next year when Travis Kelce contract's up, and then 2 years when Tyreek Hill's contract is up. But that is here or there. You spoke of the word championship. As a Kansas City Chiefs fan, we have been so mediocre for the last 20 years. We've been up and down, just like the stock market. And I'm happy that we are consistently making the AFC Championship game. Now, if we win one more Super Bowl, I would be I would be on top of the moon. If we win 2, man, Matt, you might see me in Florida partying up, man. I might be at that Super Bowl, right? Now, if we never win another AFC Championship, then I'm going to start to question, a little bit. Is Patrick Mahomes' worth ethic still there? Has the newness wore off? That type of thing. But I think you need to follow Patrick Mahomes on Instagram. He threw this behind-the-back pass. He was looking there and threw it behind his pass. Man, this kid is special.
I will say you're a little full of crap on that one, and nothing against you. You don't know you're full of crap yet, but you will be, because I mean, let's fast forward.
Full of crap 30, on what?
Let's fast forward 20 years ago. If you went to Boston, the city of Boston, with the most arrogant fans base, one of the most arrogant fan bases around per city. Everybody could say the Cowboys fans are worse, but how many bad Mavericks fans you've seen? How many bad Ranger? I mean,
it's the Cowboys.
Up in Boston. Yeah, up in Boston, it's Boston, right? Boston. I don't know. Anyway, if you would have told them 20 years ago, hey, your quarterback's going to win 6 Super Bowls, your team is going to win 6 Super Bowls over the next 20 years, they would have said, I'm sure they would have said what you said there. Right. But let's not go there. You give me 1, and I'll be excited. You give me 2, and I'll be down in the city riding. I'll be naked running through the streets. And now, I think the best thing that could happen to you, because as a Chiefs fan, is Andy Reid retire and Patrick Mahomes still be amazing. Yeah, because if you have that long, Shaq and Kobe, you have that long Andy or Tom and Bill type thing. There's going to be a fan base that eventually will get. Your fan base will eventually get. Oh, we can do this without them. And I think
Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes,
either one. They're if they both. Let's say, for example, 6 years from now, y'all win 3 Super Bowls.
Okay.
It'll be split right down the middle. Now, the only thing that I think might save you guys a little different is Tom Brady, and as great as he's been, has never looked like Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
And Bill Belichick
That is not a knock on Tom Brady.
No, not at all.
Matthew was a Tom Brady fan, guys. Just let you guys know.
I mean, that's a knock on everybody that's not Patrick Mahomes. I mean, and Bill Belichick was fairly unknown as far as the media went. I mean, he did have a little stint with the Browns and the Jets, but so when you think of Bill Belichick, you think, Patriots.
Right.
It's going to be a little different with you guys because we know what Patrick Mahomes can do. That's just ungodly type of talent. And we've seen Andy Reid so long. So even if he wins 6 rings in the next decade, I don't think you'll have that much of a problem. But complacency is certainly going to set in.
Right.
Because the moment you win back-to-back, you might allow 1 year of not winning it. But if that year you're not competitive, or that year, because you got to remember, look at some of the Patriots fans. 6 Super Bowls, 9 straight AFC championships, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, like appearances.
Right.
And there was it's nothing against you, Mike, or against Kansas City or the Kansas City fans. It's just human nature.
Right.
And then then I think you kind of get this area where you're like, especially for Kansas City and New England, I'm not going to like just act like they're not amazing. Like they didn't struggle. You remember that. And I think the last couple of years, there was a lot of New England fans. It's like, hey, I remember the 90s. You guys got to do something because this window's closing. And I feel like in this case, it'll be Andy Reid, who's substantially older as far as the career goes.
Right.
I think there's going to be a fan base in a couple of years, even if you guys get 4 or 5 more rings, where you're like, I remember the 90s and early 2000s. I remember pre-Patrick Mahomes. I don't want to go back to that. Win me more rings. And
right.
it's just human nature. But the reason I say all that is if for somehow Kansas City can be the different city, if Kansas City can be the grateful city, you can almost have like a Kobe thing in LA to where, because most of the time when these players want this biggest contract in the league, it's not about money. It's about status and feeling appreciated.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes has to be feeling pretty darn appreciated because everybody's like, oh, well, he could back out of it in 5 years. That's fine. But the fact is, Kansas City came to him and said, we're going to give you a year number unheard of, and we're going to give you a dollar amount certainly unheard of. Feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And if the fan base allows it and the organization allows it, you talked about that second contract in 35, at the age of about 35.
Yeah.
If they come to him and say, hey, because the thing that really caused the Brady thing to go down the drain is he wouldn't sign longer and they wouldn't offer him longer. If at 35 they come to Patrick Mahomes and said, we'll give you another 10-year, another $500,000 contract, which at 10 years from now, that might be a pretty fair deal.
$500 million, you mean?
Yeah, $500 million. Yeah, my bad. That might be a pretty fair deal considering how the market looks. We all know he's probably not going to play to 45. We all know that they have the opportunity to cut him at any moment, but it's all about appearance.
Yeah.
And if the fan base can just stay calm, no matter how many Super Bowls you do or do not win over the next decade, I think you can truly have this guy for 20 years. Now, whether or not he plays all that, whether or not, you know what I'm saying? But what gets crazy is when, especially if these first 3 years are absurd. If he somehow wins 3 of the next 5 years, boy, that back half of the contract, when that money starts to kick in and that fan base starts getting rabid and that, and y'all go 12-4 again. Because remember, we've joked about this. Kansas City was the ultimate 12-4 team to then not even make. If that starts happening, you even alluded to it yourself. You said it there. You said, oh, if we win 2 Super Bowls, I'll be running the street. But if we don't win the AFC, boys, if that happens, I already think it's already going to start to come out. So I just implore fans to enjoy the ride. As somebody who I like to consider myself a rare fan in the sense that I got to enjoy the Patriots ride, but I can also take that. I can also get up out the ride and go on and live my life. Like there's people in Boston burning jerseys. There's people in Boston getting Cam Newton tattoos. There's people in Boston cussing out Bill. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't step back because that last 20 years, as amazing as that is, that's their life. I've been able to kind of step back and say, man, that was fun. But is it over? Probably. Yeah. And if not, I'll enjoy it. And if it is, I'll enjoy it equally as well. So I just got to tell you, that goes by quick. And there's going to be years, like between when they beat the Eagles and before they got Randy Moss, even though that was just, I believe, 2 seasons, it felt over. And then the 3 years Mark Sanchez made it, it felt over. And then the 2 years that Peyton Manning was there, it felt over. But it never was. Like, right, and now
Right.
it probably is now. So I'm just saying there's going to be moments where you're like, I need more. Enjoy that ride, man. That's just my thing. Because you're in a position, because everybody's like, oh, well, this ain't the first 10-year contract. I'm pretty sure this is the first 10-year contract by somebody as young as him. Because, like, I believe Brett Favre's and Drew Bledsoe's, they, even in a perfect scenario, wasn't going to last 10 more years.
Yes, and let's just go ahead and jump over to the comments here. Here on
What are they
the
saying?
Facebook page, Jameson says that it has been 16 years since we got a back-to-back Super Bowl winner. The chances are very, very slim. I agree with you. I think the chances are very slim. And I'm not going to knock the Patriots' dynasty by any means, but I feel like the AFC was a lot easier back then as well. I mean, like, if you look at the AFC now, I mean, like...
I would say the AFC now is worse than it was before.
Yeah, but...
Because you got to remember, before, you'd had Peyton Manning and the Colts. You had Ben Roethlisberger in that mean defense. I mean, that was, you have the Chargers and LT always going 14-2. Now they could never get it done.
Right.
I would argue now the only thing they have going forward is Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, which has all the potential to be scary. But I'm going to need that third year, because that first year Lamar wasn't very good. Last year was spectacular. I kind of need to see that third year. Right. But I would argue it's not as competitive.
Would you think this year is the biggest toss-up for the AFC, though? Because you got the Colts with Phillip now. You have the Ravens. You have Cam Newton and the Patriots. Then you have the Chiefs. And then, you can even throw in a wild card team, and they're like maybe the Titans or Houston Texans even.
I think, and now mind you, to kind of point what Jameson said, at no point during my little ramble there did I say that they were going to go back-to-back. I think back-to-back is very tough. I think the 3 and 5 years is the most likely situation, because you win it year one, then you're a little full, so you lose it the next year. Then that year 3, you're hungry again.
Right.
Year 4, you kind of reshuffle the deck, and then year 5, everything kind of falls into place. Because if you notice, that's kind of how the Patriots did it. Mm-hmm. Even like the Cowboys and the 49ers, even though there may have been some back-to-back years, there was that year of like, oh, we're full, we have to reload. I still think this year the Chiefs are just so – what Patrick Mahomes can do is essentially what Ray Lewis did for that defense back with the Ravens.
Right.
It's just so – and you can blame what you want on Bill O'Brien and that Houston team, because they did make some crazy calls a little bit at a time there. But when 14-point lead is essentially a 3-point lead, that's just so tough.
Yeah, very, very true. But Matthew, we gotta take a quick little break here, guys.
Gotta pay them bills.
On the other side of the break, I am going to get to the comments here, like our Facebook page. We got comments, some YouTube channel at like as well, and also on Twitter. So, guys, we're going to take a quick little break, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Mike Man Hour. Michael Buckheiser here, guys. We are still getting away that $100 Amazon gift card. All you gotta do is like our Facebook page. Unlike what Jesse from Infinity Sports over there said we had to, like, you had to give us your left leg. I mean, come on. All you have to do is like the Facebook page. And if you want additional entries, share this live stream and join some of our Tash Talk groups. It is just simple as that. But tonight we do got a special guest on. We have Matthew Lyle. Me and Matthew go back quite a while here. 3 or 4 years now, Matthew? We've been talking sports together. And just to address some of the comments in the chat here Over on the Twitter, Trent says Patrick Mahomes will not win another Super Bowl in 12 years. I mean, that's a bold statement, and it could be very, 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 very true. But I think I think the Chiefs are built to win now, and just like what Matthew said, 3 and 5 years is very, very attainable. Jameson says he gives the 55% chance for the Chiefs to get back to the Super Bowl this season. I don't think that's a very slim chance. I think that's a pretty fat chance there.
I mean, yeah, considering that, like, this isn't the AFC Championship where they're playing two teams. Like, if you were telling me this before the AFC Championship game and it was Chiefs versus Ravens, and you said the Chiefs have a 55% chance of winning the game, I would say, okay, that means you're going to anticipate a close game. But you're telling me out of the 16 teams that 55% of all the 100% goes to one team, I would say that's absolutely an amazing chance.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a very, very fat chance. So, Matthew, we were going to get into a segment called Factor Crap tonight, but let's just go ahead and move past that, and let's get into some more football talk. Guys, if you are following us on our Facebook page or Instagram page, we posted up this graphic earlier, and we asked the people who is the better quarterback. Is it Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford? Just some stats here. Kirk Cousins, these are all career stats. Kirk Cousins has 12,865 yards passing, 85 touchdowns, 32 interceptions with a QBR of 98.8. That's the average per his career. Matthew Stafford has 13,401 yards passing, so roughly almost 1,000, I guess only like 500 more. 79 touchdowns, that's 6 less. 32 interceptions there, neck and neck there, and then a QBR of 94.7, 4 points less than Kirk Cousins. So, Matthew, I am going to give you the floor here for however long you need. Tell me who is the quarterback and who would you have on your team?
I'm taking Matt Stafford. I'm not Ron Jaworski. You remember him back on the old NFL Live? He was like, I've watched hours of tape. I haven't watched hours of tape. I don't watch a whole lot of either one of them. And I'll be honest with you, in about the last decade here, I've watched nothing but the Red Zone channel. So I don't really have – yeah, it's amazing. It's the greatest thing ever. If you got ADHD, I strongly encourage it. But so what I have, though, is like flashcards. Remember those little things as a kid? They're a little red. You put the little disc in there and you go – and it's just a little bunch of little pictures. That's what I have. And the one that jumps out to me for Matt Stafford is, yes, he hasn't made the playoffs, but let's be honest, they have wasted some amazing careers up there with the Detroit Lions, is that the game where he hurt his shoulder and went back out, and I forgot who it was against. I want to say like the Jets or the Browns, but I'm probably way off. And he led them on a game-winning drive. Like, it's just plays like that I haven't seen Kirk Cousins make. I've seen Kirk Cousins do a bunch of little things and then yell at me, do you like that? Which my answer is, meh. Kind of liked it.
I kind of liked it, yeah.
All right. Like, it was good. Like, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to pick it. I'm not going to go to the store and say, yeah, I'll take that. But if it was there, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. So in this situation, I just want Matt Stafford. I think I like, and maybe it's just a downfall, but I feel like his demeanor on the field, what little we have seen in that primetime moment, the Lions haven't been there a lot. I feel like they got a little bit of the shaft in I want to say their one playoff game. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they make the playoffs and lose in a very shafty way to the Cowboys? It's just little things like that if these numbers are close enough, and if I'm building a team. Now, if you told me I have to pick between the Lions with Matt Stafford and the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, that might be a different story. But if I'm picking a team, if I have a team like Tampa Bay has with those weapons, and with that coach especially, give me Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
Give me that, and I'll take the risk with the injury because the kid can sling it. He's got guts. And I feel like with somebody like Bruce Arians, and I just picked that team because I assume we had to put him on a team. I don't think he's throwing to me and you, Mike. I wouldn't take any quarterback in that case.
There's a reason why I play defense.
Exactly. Yeah, just give me Matt Stafford on this. It's one of those ones where gut feeling. You go to a new school, you ever notice like there's always that new kid, and you could always tell when the new kid walked into school, you could say that kid's a baller.
Yeah.
Or we're picking that kid last. And you might be wrong. The baller kid who looks like he can hoop may not do a thing, and the kid that looks like he can't do anything may light you up, and you're gonna be wrong, and you're gonna have to live with that.
Right.
But you just feel that gut instinct. That's what I go with on everything, and that's what I'm going with here. I'll take Matt Stafford. Age-wise, I don't really know what they are age-wise. I know Matt Stafford.
I think they're pretty close in age.
Obviously, Matt Stafford came in number one pick. It was his show from A1 day one.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins came in, I want to say, from Michigan State, had a little bit more of a back road to take. But yeah, give me Matt Stafford on that one.
Yeah, so just jumping in over this stat chat here, overwhelmingly it is Matthew Stafford. I don't think I've seen anybody pick Kirk Cousins on any YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, or even on Spreaker.
I mean, it's just the name too. Like there's certain players that, and sometimes it's to a detriment, but there's certain players when you hear those names, you're like, oh, they're not good.
Yeah. And
then you look and you're like, oh, wow, the numbers were decent. And one day that might be the case for Kirk Cousins, but I feel like that's not it now. And I don't feel like for a season, for a game, for a drive even, that I'm getting anything remotely near Matt Stafford. Like I feel like, especially like if you, and I don't know what Minnesota's going to have now, but if you gave me an offense where Matt Stafford was quarterback with Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, Dalvin Cook, I feel like that offense may not win. That may not be a team that wins a lot because that's not how the NFL works. We've talked about that,
right?
But I feel like that's at least like you're seeing some crazy yards. I feel like Matt Stafford's like breaking records that year.
Now it is much like Julio Jones.
Right. He might throw 55 touchdowns, but I feel like he's going and 30 interceptions. But I feel like the numbers are going to be crazy good.
Right. So, just to add to some points there to you here, that drive that you were talking about, people in the chat did confirm that was against the Browns that Matthew Stafford drove down, and with the hurt shoulder. The Lions have been to the playoffs twice underneath Matthew Stafford, and Kirk Cousins.
Who was the other one was?
What?
Do they know? I'll look it up off the screen. I was just curious. I remember the one in Dallas where I thought they won it, but I felt like they got shafted on a hold. But I'm trying to think who the second playoff game was.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't remember much of the Detroit Lions history there. We do have some Detroit Lions people in the chat here, so they could probably definitely tell you. So let me add to the validity here of picking Matthew Stafford over Kirk Cousins. And they just said that the other Detroit Lions playoff game was against the Saints. So just to let you know there. Yeah,
I imagine it was early on, and because I have my memory gets much better the less playoff games there are. And those first weekends where you get literally like a full Sunday slate,
right? Those
kind of blend together. So I knew that they must not have made it far, and I highly doubt they won their division. Okay, then. Well, fair enough. So two playoffs, yeah.
So there is a reason why Matthew Stafford signed that $100 million deal, 6 years ago now, 5 years ago now, and Kirk Cousins consistently gets franchise tagged. Well, he got franchise tagged twice, and then the transition tag in Washington. So he got tagged 3 times, I believe, in Washington, and he's only won one primetime game, and that was because it was a botched call versus the Saints in the playoffs. So like I believe Kirk Cousins in a quote primetime game, that's Monday night, Sunday night.
It's pretty bad.
He has never won a game.
It's pretty bad. I thought maybe I want to say he grabbed one regular season win, maybe against Dallas. I don't know. I just feel like I've heard people talk about that. Question for you, just kind of connecting the dots or side thought here. Was it Matt Stafford or Sam Bradford that got the rookie contract so big that it created the rookie rule?
That was Sam Bradford.
That was Sam Bradford?
Because he signs like a, was it? It was
because they're about the same age too, ain't they? I think Stafford's probably older because Matt Stafford was with Georgia in 2007, and then Sam Bradford, and then Sam Bradford came out the next year from Oklahoma because he lost to Tebow in the championship. So that's crazy that Matt Stafford. I mean, that's another reason right there because Matt Stafford, bad as he's struggled, still kicking it around.
So the only thing that I could validify giving Kirk Cousins a little bit of edge is that he has never had weapons around him, you can say. Because when you go back to his Washington days, who did he really have to throw the ball to? No receivers are popping out of my mind. I can't even think of a running back that they had, and then, last year was his only year with a credible wide receiver core with Stephon Diggs and Thielen, and he did pretty well. Now, Matthew Stafford had Calvin Johnson for what, 8 years?
Calvin Johnson, but, I mean, he also, like, the rest of that team was horrible. I mean, that's a team that I feel like there could have been something there, if there had been a better team. But, yeah, I mean, that is a good point. I don't know who else he's had. Nothing really jumps out as far as true ballers outside of Calvin Johnson. I mean, there's some Galladay now has some potential, and I think Marvin Jones was somebody that I would definitely take in fantasy. But, I give you that. But I think when we're talking a smorgasbord, I feel like even though I don't know if the record would have been any better, I don't know if their playoff success would have been even higher. I don't even know if they would have. And I don't know if Matt Stafford would have probably thrown an interception on that wild play to Stephon Diggs in the playoffs. But I feel like overall, with Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, everybody else, I feel like that one season that would have been like Stafford's, like 6,000-yard passing season.
Right. So, I mean, when you are judging players, like who is, let's be honest, they pretty much have identical stats, like a couple hundred yards more here, a couple more touchdowns. I think of if I were to put this quarterback on, let's say, the Kansas City Chiefs, would you take Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford? There, I think I would take Kirk Cousins, just because he has a little bit more scrambling mobility, able to stretch the plays much like Patrick Mahomes does. I'm not saying he's like Patrick Mahomes whatsoever. I'm just saying he kind of has that ability type of thing. Now, if you were to take those two quarterbacks and put them on the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to take Matthew Stafford. I like his pocket. I like his pocket presence, the arm strength to get the ball down the field, and to turn around to hand the ball off to Zeke as well. So, I mean, it is really it comes down to what team you are putting these quarterbacks on, and I want to say Matthew Stafford probably fits better on more teams than Kirk Cousins, so that's why I think Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback in the end.
And I think that's what a lot of people have taken into consideration with these who's better, and a lot of people don't. And it's not even just about what you think is a better skill. It's about what annoys you as a person. It's about what you enjoy as a player. I mean, when you think back to some of your, I think NBA, because style is more allowed in the NBA. But I grew up watching AI, Tracy McGrady, and just retired Vince Carter. Those were players who were great. Were they the best in the league? No. I mean, Kobe Bryant was better than all three of those, but I enjoyed these three over Kobe Bryant. Now, I'm not saying they're better. I'm just saying that you let me pick. That's who I'll take. And I think that's, and I think that's something that a lot of people have to take into consideration. What frustrates you? What annoys you? If you're a coach and a guy who doesn't stand in the pocket annoys you, or if you're a fan and you don't like a running quarterback or somebody puts himself in danger, you probably don't want Lamar Jackson. It probably has nothing to do with anything else. You're probably just like, that annoys me. And my biggest thing is, and I don't know why, I love watching Steph Curry. I think when he plays, it looks Steffortless, as they like to joke.
Steffortless? That's stupid.
James Harden annoys the crap out of me. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the fact that he has a dad bod and he's just making it look crazy out there. I mean, I'm not saying he's bad. He's a great player. He's an awesome scorer. I don't think he's that clutch, but I mean, I guess people would argue the same about Steph. When I watch, one, I just am in awe, and the other one, I'm just like, yeah, cringe. I don't try to change anyone else's mind. I wouldn't want anybody to try to change my mind, and I think that's a lot of things that people don't realize. So, there's a lot that, when I see Matt Stafford throw an interception, I may watch that and be like, okay, you were trying. I like what I seen there. It didn't end well, but I like what you were doing. Kirk Cousins might throw a touchdown, and I'm like, I hate you. I don't know, but I think that's a lot of things, just kind of popped in my head when talking about this. People don't take into consideration when they're like, oh, well, who would you take? Well, maybe you want a Michael Jordan guard, or maybe you want a LeBron James because he's a 6'8", beast who just can jump from the free throw line at will. And Michael Jordan was a smaller, more finesse type player, especially early in his career. That's why I don't ever like to engage in a lot of those conversations, but that's just kind of my thought on it.
So, and then also, another kind of ruling thumb that I use is if they were to flip-flop teams, if you were to put Kirk Cousins on the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford on the Vikings, who would have a better season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one, too. Kirk Cousins would be irrelevant, in my opinion. You switch them, Kirk Cousins would be irrelevant. That team had just so many holes, and I think Matt Stafford with the Vikings, especially last year with that roster, probably puts up, like I said, he's not perfect. He's going to turn the ball over, and they're going to win some games where you're like, how did you lose that game? But I think he puts up absurd numbers.
Yeah, I think Matthew Stafford has had such a tough career that he has that thicker skin and maybe a more eagerness to win. Hey, I'm 33 or 34, it's time for me to do something, and I think Matthew Stafford on the Vikings would do better than Kirk Cousins on the Lions, just because of that cultural difference that they've had in their careers.
And I don't want to go too far down this path because it can get very long, it can get very boring, and it can get very dangerous also because you're playing with people's thoughts, which we have no business doing because we don't know. But one thing I always find interesting is you take somebody, what's their life like? And then when they check out of the field, people like to think this isn't a part of the game, but what do they do in the other, however many hours a week that they're not in football pads or not in a helmet? And I ask that because, like you said, Matt Stafford seems like a kid from Georgia, a kid from the South, seems like a kid that go out there and get tackled, buddy. Just is used to taking a hit. He's been injured.
Right.
So if he ever got on a playoff team, if he ever got on a team like the Vikings where there was weapons, or the Buccaneers like we talked with all those weapons, that the kid would lay his life on the line, probably to a fault, because he's like, oh, I've been beat up there in Detroit for years. Let me finally get a good squad. Kirk Cousins, and I'm not saying I don't want to take anything away from him, but you have to look at does he look at his career as, I've just secured my family, right? Like he wasn't a top round pick. I think he went second or third, which don't get me wrong. I don't want to get into discussion. I know everybody in the NFL makes good money, but when we're talking in context to everybody else, Kirk Cousins, when he signed that deal, just set his family up. You mentioned it himself. No more short-term deals. He locked it in. And I'm not saying he goes out there and he's like, well, I don't want to get hurt or I got my money. But there's this thing in the back of your head where your priority. And there's a difference. And if anybody who's played sports knows, your 100% is not the same every game. I played wide receiver. If the weather was perfect, if we were on a nice turf field, if we were playing a team where the game actually meant something, my 100% was a heck of a lot different than if we were on some mud slop with pouring rain. And it's cold out and you can't, you try to keep your hands warm and that ball just feels 10 pounds heavier.
Right.
That 100% differs. And I just think, I find it very interesting. I enjoy having the thought process, at least, or the conversation. When you take Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins, what's their 100%? And I don't want this to be a negative.
Yeah.
Me and Billy from an old show, we always used to have this conversation. LeBron James 100% and Michael Jordan 100% probably was two different things. But that's a beautiful thing because it cost Michael Jordan a lot of personal connections. I mean, you watch The Last Dance. People who have been his friends for 20 years hate him now for things he's still holding grudges against.
Right.
He still hates Scottie Pippen for missing the first half of that 98 season. You can't be that much of a killer on the court and then go home and spend time with your kids. No, you go home with that same fire and passion.
Yeah.
You're sitting at home making up stuff to be pissed about. LeBron James seems to have a good connection with his family, right? Like he seems to go home and do a little Taco Tuesday, and he wants to kick back. He wants to do Space Jam. Life's amazing. There's nothing wrong with either one of those, but that's just two different levels of 100%. And I think that's something, too, that I find very interesting about, like, the Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford. I feel like their 100% are different. And if you put them both on great teams, if you put them both on the Chiefs, as you mentioned, I feel like the 100% you're getting from Matt Stafford would be different. and probably more beneficial from a team standpoint than 100% you get from Kirk Cousins.
That is a great point. I never thought of it like that too. But let's go ahead and shift gears here, jump into the chat here, and they it has been officially announced that the NFL preseason has been canceled, and they have to cut the roster down to 80 players within the next week. What are your thoughts on that?
So, the thing, as far as football goes, as far as the actual quality on the field, I'm fine with it. I mean, I think the preseason had become really the only thing enjoyable about preseason is the fact that the NFL was back. And as a college football fan, you kind of get to see some guys who's not going to make a roster right away. It was kind of fun.
Right.
So I don't really concern myself with, I don't think the quality is going to dip on that. My main concern is now we lost the buffer. Right now we're metal on metal. Because before, when everybody, no matter what your thoughts on COVID and the situation, anytime it popped up, you was like, well, we still got preseason. And as long as they kept canceling, they canceled the Hall of Fame game, as long as they kept chipping away at game to game, you always felt like you had that cushion. That cushion's gone. Yep. Because now the only thing they have to do is start canceling actual games. Now the only thing you have to get rid, you've done cut the fat off. Now the only thing you can start cutting off is true meat. And that gets a little concerning to me. Another thing that I find interesting, do they get to ride with the 80 players all season?
Ooh, that I don't know. I mean,
because as a semi-pro guy, and you know this, Mike, now's your chance to make it.
Right.
If NFL teams are carrying 80 guys, which it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense from a standpoint of you don't get time
COVID.
To cut. Somebody gets COVID. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody has to be on lockdown for 2 weeks. I mean, obviously, there's not a player out there you can pick up to replace Patrick Mahomes if he was to get it.
Right.
But the other, there's 30 other people on that roster that is, I don't want to call them replaceable, but they can be replaced short term.
It is always the next man up mentality
for everybody.
In the NFL.
Every team has typically a 53-man roster. I would say about 40 of them you get to really go next man up. Every team's got that 10 to 13 players where you're like, nope, there is no next man for that.
Yes. So one of the biggest things that I've seen earlier, like when you brought if they're keeping all 80 players, I actually saw where they're cutting down the practice team down from 16 down to 10. So I would not count on them keeping the 80 guys.
My concern with the 82 is, are they going to put some kind of flexibility with the salary cap?
And the chat said they have to cut it down to 55 before the season starts. So they're not keeping all 80.
Okay, so they're not keeping all 80.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I guess it makes sense to me both ways.
Because you get more bodies, more chance of getting COVID.
More time. Yep. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. But also, if somebody gets COVID, you don't want to. Because also, if we're trying to, because the NFL can't bubble. The NBA has the luxury of bubbling because they cut it down to 22 teams, and you essentially have 20 players and personnel. So that's a much more manageable. Where in the NFL, you have 32 teams. You can't play. We've all seen basketball played in buildings. You can't put 10 football fields beside each other and make that happen. You have 100 people on a roster and training on a staff. My concern, the reason I thought the 80 might work as well, is you get to somewhat control those 80 people, right? Because let's say me and you are free agents.
Right.
Well, we would never make a 53-man roster, but let's say we would make an 80-man roster.
Okay.
Well, if you have an 80-man roster, we know we're probably not going to play. We're not going to do much, but we're going to be near the facility. We're going to be active with the team. We're going to be learning things. If you don't have us, we're going to be flying around working out. Right, we're going to be New York, L.A., Florida. Exactly. We're going to be flying, and that's my only thing is, obviously there's always a free agent pool for NFL players to dip into. I found it interesting that the 80 players might be a long-term or at least a season-long thing. So you get to have your free agent pool there, and you get to kind of control that free agent pool.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah.
Hey, I'm the Buffalo Bills. You're in L.A. Can you get here tomorrow? When really. I don't even know if we're going to get to a point where that's acceptable, right? Like you fly from LA to Buffalo, they're going to want you locked down, they're going to want you to test, they're going to want you to take at least a couple of days. And in the world of NFL, your player gets hurt on Sunday, you want that guy on the roster Monday.
Yeah,
You
want him there Sunday night at midnight to sign his contract.
You want him, you want him in pads, gears, clacking Tuesday day at practice. You want film on Monday, practice on Tuesday, and that's why I know there's a lot of questions on how that salary cap is going to work, but also I could see it making an exception because you do want that. Because 30 players would essentially give you Noah's Ark, 2 of everything.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. The main thing that made me nervous is now that cushion's gone. Because now there's nothing for you to take away but actual games.
So let me ask you this question before we wrap up the show here. I mean, people have said that they did not schedule, or like they kind of mixed the schedule around for like non-division games the first couple weeks so they could cut those games out if necessary. Do you think if they have to cut out games, they would just move the season back, to start, say, October? Or are they going to cut out those first 3-4 weeks? Like, what is the ideal situation in your eyes?
So, in my eyes, it would be that flexibility. The problem is, well, first off, the Super Bowl is like the next thing to a holiday.
Yeah.
Like, we know the next 5 Super Bowls. Like, that's December 25th, 4th of July, January 1st, whatever, the first Monday in February or Sunday in February.
Yeah.
Those are like national holidays. But my bigger concern is think back pre-COVID. Think right before COVID, before all this hit and life got changed. What was the big sports news? NFL signed a new deal. And there was a lot of players who were not happy with it, right? Like there was a big thing like, what does Aaron Rodgers think about this? What does this player? So I felt going into COVID that the tensions were already high between the PA, the Players Association,
right,
and the owners. I don't see either side being real flexible. Because here's the thing. I would imagine if the first 4 games of the season gets postponed, it's not going to be announced today. It's going to be announced like 3 days before the game. So you're still going to be practicing. You're still going to be tackling. You're still going to be click-clacking. You're still going to be making hits, working out, putting your body through hell. I don't see a lot of these PA players, the union, the big-time players, being real cool with being flexible, considering how the NFL has kind of been a dick lately, like the last decade. Like, you want to smoke weed? Yeah, you better give us a lot of money. Oh, you want to do that? You want to wear fancy cleats? But not on my watch. You want to do, because
no fun,
it's kind of,
right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the moment. Oh, you want something? You want to wear dark visors? Well, what are you going to give me? And I don't see those players being too receptive when they're saying, hey, guys, I know you've been practicing really hard. How about we just push everything back another month?
Yeah.
I just don't see that being too receptive. I don't see players being willing to do that. I think at that point, even your mid-tier players would start saying, nah. Because that was always the thing, right? Like the top 10% could afford a lockout, and the rest of the 90 couldn't.
Right.
I think when we start talking about things like this, and players have already gotten accustomed to making certain sacrifices, and they've seen how COVID works, and whatever you believe on it, they've been a part of it, I could see more players saying, you know what, we'll just meet you in summer of 2021.
Well,
right? We'll take that hit.
Yeah, just to add to some context there, the NFL and the Players Association have already agreed to some type of contingency plan if the NFL season doesn't happen, that the players do still get paid. So there was kind of a give and take there. I don't think they have.
Is that enough though to go the entire month? Is that enough to do? Because I mean, you got to remember, this is an NFL league that didn't want you smoking weed without giving up the boat.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I don't know any of the details in it whatsoever, but I do know that a plan is in place to pay the players if the season doesn't happen or if the games get cut down. Jameson says that they will postpone the games, and I don't think they have the flexibility to postpone the games because of, for one, the Super Bowl is a national holiday. Like, let's be honest, this just like you said, 4th of July, Christmas, New Year's Day, Super Bowl. That is such a security nightmare and a logistics thing. Like you cannot move that back because like we saw the Olympics get moved back, and what it cost them was like $6 billion to change it, and for like a year, like a year later. So it is just a logistical nightmare.
And what you're doing is you're eventually going to have one of the biggest headaches you've ever seen. And I think as the NFL and as players, you have to decide which headache is worth it. Because sure, you could move. Let's say they buy into moving it back. Let's say they decide to move everything back 1 month, right? Guess what happens then? To teams that make the playoffs, draft comes and goes, and you lose 1 month of off-season rest.
Right.
How many players do you think want to end up the season? And that's just assuming we do it 1 month. God forbid we have to go 6-8 weeks. You want to finish? Oh, drop my mic. You want to finish the entire season in April, and then get right back to camp in July? That's going to be a headache that I don't think anybody's going to be on board for.
Yeah, I wonder how many injuries we would see come.
Exactly, and that's why honestly, and I know money-wise is an issue, and I think a lot of these discussions are happening. I mean, by no means I'm nobody. I'm not breaking news here to anybody, but that's the downside to moving college football. You know, they talk about we got to have college football so all these other teams can have sports, all these universities can keep up their sports. Well, if you move it to the spring, do you keep it at spring forever? Because, you know, if you're LSU, for example, and you go on that run you went on and you win the national championship and you host that national championship up May 30th, when do you go back to practice? 2 weeks later? A month later?
Right.
I mean, and then if you get drafted, you got to sit out. Do you want to sit out? What about Joe Burrow himself? Let's take somebody like Joe Burrow.
Do you even play that senior year then?
I think the scouts had said, like Mel Kiper and those, you know, geniuses or gurus had said that if he didn't have that senior type year, he was a 5th round pick.
Really?
So obviously he would have played. I mean, right? Because I mean, if you look at his junior year, wasn't nothing too impressive. So now you take that guy. I mean, I often wondered, would the answer be just cancel everything? Just say, hey, well, and I get it. There's a lot of money, and I don't know, and I don't want that. But I often wonder if it would just be easier to say, hey, we're going to start fresh, and we are going to advertise the crap out of it. I don't know. I mean, I have this nice little situation where I wouldn't mind, where you kind of get your cake and eat it both, where the college football plays in the spring and the NFL plays in the fall. So you get like nonstop NFL in the fall. And so when you draft a kid like Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence or one of these, Chase Young, they don't get to play right away. There's kind of like a little development summer league they play in. And then by week 8, week 10, you can move them up to the roster. I think that would give a good balance of allowing young guys to develop, allowing veterans to, you know, have a roster spot for a little longer to see if they can have a career. And you can, I mean, think about it. You would essentially have football 12 months a year in some form or fashion.
That would be a contractual disaster, man. Like that is something that to do in the WNBA. I'm not for sure like exactly like all of the logistics, because the WNBA does play in the summer and they draft in like
right.
I don't know.
Well, your really only problem would be that first year, right? Because you would probably draft a guy in April. He'd probably play another month of college football, and then his NFL career would start 2 months later. But, I mean, after that, I think you'd be good. I mean, obviously they're going to be – and I'm sure there's a ton of downsides I have no clue about. I just think a nightmare is going to try to become if you start trying to get out. I mean, the only sport that I think could benefit from that is basketball, because I think the NBA would be much better off if it ran if it started on Christmas Day, because think how much we love Christmas Day basketball, because the NFL is kind of winding down.
That's when I think the season starts.
Yeah, the season should start decent, Christmas Day, and the playoffs should wrap up in like August. So then you're like, oh, Game 7 of the finals, then tomorrow kickoff of the NFL. You don't have that goofy July, August where you're like,
it's baseball season, son.
Yeah, I don't care. Nobody cares.
And
then college basketball would be even better, because you could have May Madness, right? Like basketball is the only sport that I think can survive that.
May Madness. I still like March Madness, because
let's be real.
I take spring break off and get able to watch it.
Oh, now you'd be in summer break.
All right, Matthew, we got to wrap it up, man. Our hour is up. As always, thank you for joining me, man. Like I said, Mike LeBlanc is MIA tonight. Matthew has a wealth of knowledge over there, and I'm always glad to have him on. But, man, as always, thank you. And until next time, my man, take care.
Same rap channel.
Later, guys.
Man hour. You already know. It's live. It's raw. It's going down. Like this. I'm going around and letting everybody know that they welcome to the show. It's the latest thing you ever seen, you already know. Let me introduce you to your host of the hour. It be Mike and Mike. Yeah, it's the man hour. Got the hottest plays, all the breaking news. Every rumor, every trade, every breaking bruise. Tighten knuckle screws. Yeah, it's going down. Have you saying what the fuck and never watered down? It's going down. I'll be rolling up. And if you buy it or you sell it, then you made the cut. Watch me flip it back. I can double up. I got sriracha for that ass, I'ma burn it up. Gotta check the rules and know that it be fair and foul. Rep blow the whistle, coach throw the towel. We can do this on the field or outside the lines. It's the man hour though, now we going live.
Live, raw, and uncut. Have a great night, y'all.